Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God the snow has lessened slightly in the Buffalo area. Although, Russ, they put out the call for people to come shovel out the stadium again. You couldn't pay me $20,000 an hour, let alone $20 an hour to shovel.
If they find a bunch of like 15-year-olds, I mean, I don't know.
No, well, I'm sure there are people who are unemployed, but.
Yeah, well, if Air Canada keeps delaying my flight, I might as well go do that.
As long as you don't have a bad back.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Not doing it. I'm 56 years old. I don't want to die at Highmark Stadium of a heart attack because I was shoveling it. I could barely shovel it out of my own driveway.
Watching them anyhow,
yeah. well, that's a different thing. I can die of a heart attack in my own home rather than in a row of snow at Highmark Stadium. Anyway, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
So we'll give a big rest in peace to Sports Illustrated. I loved Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated and Sport Magazine were just icons for me as a kid. We used to get them both in my house. I read everything cover to cover. My favorite magazine from Sports Illustrated was the '69 Seaver cover where he was Sportsman of the Year. I mean, that was a big deal. If you won Sportsman of the Year of all the different sports that were out there, that was a big deal. It was very prestigious. And then it turned into, like, if you were a writer, you were an AI writer for Sports Illustrated. It's really a shame how it ended.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say, Russ, I had many of those subscription promo things like the football phone, the different things. And I will say, as someone who, who likes to write and always found a passion in writing and stuff during my teen years, the one writer who I always wanted to read, and I was always happy when he wrote the point after at the end, was Frank DeFord.
Oh,
he was
amazing.
He was amazing, and rest in peace, Frank. He's been on a long time now, but I don't think people truly understand the quality of writing that existed in Sports Illustrated. It was the creme de la creme of, and even before Rick Riley.
Yeah, and Riley's good. Riley's
and I just, it's sad because if Sports Illustrated can't modernize and find a way to survive with original content and great writers and make it work, then I'm really scared about the future, and that's a sad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be in jest on the first point, which is the thing I'll miss the most about Sports Illustrated will be the suspension issue, especially back in the day when it was Albert Pearson and Stephanie Seymour and Carol Alt. That was Ron Greshner's ex-wife and Alexei Yashin's wife. But I mean, the writing was great, and I agree with what Peter just said about the state of the business because. It's really a situation where, I mean, the hockey news is now digital. They have a monthly issue instead of a weekly issue, and I have a pile of old hockey newses, and that's, honestly, if you obviously now with the internet you can stay up to date on things, but there is a place for a periodical, for good writing, for quality reporters, and it just.
So, Mike, you're 100% right. And you know what we've done in our house recently? I have adult kids who still live at home, young adult, in school. We recently cut our cable. I said, we're turning off the TV. We've got enough access to things on streaming services if we want entertainment and sports. And I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take that money. We're going to put it into some subscriptions to writing. And we're going to get some magazine subscriptions. And we're going to put it out the other way. I would encourage everyone else to do that. You know what? I think I can't remember who the artist was. There was like a song that said 57 channels and nothing on. Now it's like 657 channels and nothing on. And you know what? You just fall sucker into things. You know what? Let's take that money, cut the cord, pay for your subscription for your sports and stuff. Do that. Limit what you are and put it into good journalism. Put it into good writing. Find a thing you value. And support it because
you could have bought one of my 10 books.
Yeah, and buy one of Russ's books. It's the same thing, and that's a totally good point.
Peter, no wonder I didn't know what 57 channels and nothing on was. It's Springsteen, so of course I didn't know it. Yeah. But no, I mean, yeah. But the funny thing is like,
don't care about the nostalgia. That's where I think Sports Illustrated got killed, because every once in a while they would put out a history book of sports with great photos. I have one with Bruce Bennett that he did it, and I found them great, but I guess nobody under the age of 40 did.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, but hey, we're in the era of NFTs, which is basically you're buying a digital picture and you don't have anything I'm sorry, I'm still of the age that I want, if I'm collecting something, I want something tangible in my hands, not
I would like that.
I liked having a CD or a DVD and not just a burned MP3 on my computer that if my computer crashes, it's gone forever unless you back it up.
So to point that out, why is there a resurgence in vinyl? And I used to work in the .com industry.
Sound quality. That's why.
It's not the sound quality.
It is the sound quality.
The sound quality, it's an experience of a tangible thing.
Yeah.
And it's the experience of it, because you know what you get in vinyl? You get liner notes. You get all the things. And what did we used to do? We used to pull out records and we used to look at who played on what were the tracks, what were the things. And those are the most, it's unique, and it allows people a different kind of experience. And we go through cycles like this in history. If everything had gone according to history, in the 50s, when the great post-war great manufacturing boom of everything, we would have solved all problems. There's no reason for Etsy to exist, but artisans find ways to do things, and we're coming back to that and things.
No, that's fair.
I hope we come back to it when it comes to writing.
As a guy who got rid of all his vinyl, and then someone recently gifted me, one of those portable Victrolas with Bluetooth and stuff.
Right.
It was nice to kind of relive what it's like to, listen to an album. But still, it was, there are drawbacks of listening to an album. And I think part of it is you have to sort of, unless you really want to pick up your needle and start moving it around with songs, you've got to sort of be invested into listening to at least a couple sides. And I don't think young people want to do that either, for the most part. I don't.
You could, the problem with vinyl is taking care of it and making sure, but the thing is that, my brother owns an electronics business in the Buffalo area, and sells high-end stereos, and believe me, there is a difference in sound quality from vinyl to a digital copy of either an MP3.
Digital copy, yes, but you can make CDs as good as vinyl.
Yeah, I mean there are some, and I have like the gold CDs that are like digitally remastered. They get it from the original board recording of like bootlegs and stuff like that, and it's pretty close. But the thing is, you really have to invest in the heavy LP, the ones with the
150 grams or whatever.
The deep grooved ones, and thousands of dollars in a stereo. Whereas somebody who's a working stiff, it's probably easier.
Yeah, and I bought an old Chicago one, Mike, the live one, and it's great. And somebody kept perfect condition of it, but the Mike and the Mechanics, first couple songs, it's a little warped. It skips a little. Yep. You got to live with it.
All right, let's start with the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 19th, 2024.
Hey, I'm Pete Tessier, coming to you from Pearson Airport here in Toronto.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the news of the day. Shane Pinto, who was suspended for 41 games earlier in the season, that suspension is, I think it's almost over with. I think I know that he's
playing Sunday.
Yeah, so it's over with. So I know that he started to practice with the Senators about a week ago. That was something that was allowed under the agreement, and now he has signed a 1-year deal for the veteran minimum of $775,000. The speculation is, and it's been reported by a number of places, that, and I think it was Elliot Friedman that reported that they're working on a long-term deal. So, Russ, what I compared this to was the Kevin LeBanc deal that happened with San Jose a few years ago, where he signed a 1-year deal for, I think it was $1 million, basically as an agreement with Doug Wilson. It was like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll give you, you take this. We're going to take care of you on the new deal. And that sounds like what's happening here.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think Ottawa should go crazy on this deal because while Pinto had 20 goals last year, he's still got a lot to prove.
Right.
You'd like to see him become like a 45, 50 point guy, not a 35 one. So I think he has that ability in him. But he has skipped some steps. He's another one of those guys that only 2 years in college. And so, like, the ones that have skipped steps, if I were the GM, I would not give him as much as others that have really, kind of went the right way to really get themselves a certain amount of reps in the minors and everything else to get to the NHL. Not everybody's Connor Bedard, but I think he could get like a $3 million a year contract. I guess that's probably in the range 3.5. And if they do that, yeah, I mean, he's a good player to have.
It's a question if they go longer term, then it's probably in the 4s. It's
right.
If it's like a 5 or 6 year deal, he may want security after what happened.
He's 23. I mean, I have no problem giving 5 would be the max. I'm not doing any more than that.
Right. Now, Peter, I know that the news also came out that Jim Rutherford is agreed to a 3-year contract extension. Now, the funny thing was when he came in, it was almost like he came in as, okay, I'll do this for a year or two, and then I'll be heading off into the sunset. And the way that this team is playing and where they are and the success that they've had, I'm sure ownership, I'm sure the Aquilini said, we want you to stay. We'll do anything for you to stay. Could you please stay? And now he's staying for 3 years.
Yeah. I think perhaps it'll be interesting to see what comes out because, one, he obviously has an influence with the GM, given who he hired and where they came from. But I think it's the one thing out of the Vancouver that you don't hear a lot about now is some of the stuff that was about ownership and philosophy of ownership and influence into hockey decisions. Mm-hmm. It's much quieter. And maybe it took some of Rutherford's stature and time and working with ownership to sort of fix maybe some of the rumored problems that existed before that were frequently coming up since the departure of what's his face, Mike Gillis. And I think perhaps, look, it's been a frustrating time for a lot of Canucks fans. It's been a frustrating time for the team, some of the performance, and maybe, just maybe, Rutherford's got some fingerprints in the back that have helped stabilize things, and it took him this long to do it. And now other benefit, and of course, the on ice product would help that case for sure.
Well, definitely. But okay. This time last year, at this point, Bruce Boudreau, the stringing along of Bruce Boudreau and how badly that was handled. The whole thing that happened with Emily Costengay and Rachel Dory and all in the organization. The Horvat deal and how that was handled. There was definitely a before and now an after where things have settled down. They bring in Tocchet and playing really well. So, Russ, I think, it didn't start out great, but it's sort of settled into where there's a comfort zone now.
No, and you forgot about the Braden Holtby turtle saga.
Yeah.
But with the whole border situation.
Yeah.
But here's what I would say. I always thought, and I remember I used to challenge Kevin Allen on this, that the biggest crock in hockey was that Jim Rutherford was going to retire. We heard that every time he left somewhere. He's going to retire. That's it. He's going to go play golf and he's going to retire. Yeah, okay. That was how many years ago?
Yeah.
How many jobs ago?
Yeah.
Not going to happen. So this basically proves my point.
Russ, that's a very astute sort of plug to yourself. I think you're right. It's like Brian Burke trying to step away from something. Right. It's just not going to happen. They're going to find new projects.
Or Lou's going to die in a GM.
Yeah. And I think Rutherford's in a good place because he doesn't have to live there. He travels.
Right.
He's earned the trust of ownership, and he's helped put ownership in the role that they need to be, and that's hard to do.
Ownership there has certainly wasted so much money that this is really well spent.
Yeah. So, Now, we are right now, let's see, is it 6 weeks away from the trade deadline? Trade deadline's March the 8th, but already things are starting to pop up. Names are starting to, get into the percolator. And I wish we had Eck here today, but there was a power outage and it is where he is, so he couldn't
Yeah,
join
we're
us.
getting some bad weather here.
Yeah, she should be back on Monday. But the question is right now is who are buyers and who are sellers. And Russ, the Philadelphia Flyers really are sort of bucking the trend and going against what I thought was the case, which was that they were not a good team and that they are rebuilding. And they've said they're rebuilding, but that apparently, John Tortorella didn't agree with that, and they're going, headlong into trying to be competitive. And right now they are competitive. I believe they're second place in the Metro. They won last night. Some players are playing really well for them. And the question I think that Eck put up was, are they buyers or are they sellers? Now, I think they might be both. I think they might sell and they also might buy.
I think their version of buying was the Drysdale trade. I don't think they're going to buy anything. I think they actually, from little whispers that we're hearing and John's leaking out stuff, that I still think they are making trades. And I think they are still looking to the future. They're not going to totally derail this team. Like, they'll keep Connecty there. They'll keep Hart there right now. But they are going to trade those other guys because they just have too many RFAs and UFAs to really manage, next year. So I think they understand that, and they know that, hey, right now they're in a great spot. They also know that it's 6 weeks away to the deadline. A lot could happen in the NHL in 6 weeks, no matter how good you're playing one moment. They've been fairly healthy, so that's something that, that could always change.
Yeah.
So I think actually in this case, while I don't love the usage of some of the young players that John is doing, beside that, it does seem like management is at least looking for the future, to the future, and not saying, hey, this is our new normal. This is how it's going to be every year. So I think they're partially getting it. But again, I do think they could be doing a little better with player development in Lehigh and with the Flyers, but that's a subject for another day.
I mean, Peter, you can't deny the success so far of what the Flyers are doing. I mean, they have 56 points right now. They're only 2 points behind the Rangers for first place in the Metro. The Rangers got hammered yesterday by Vegas, and the Rangers have not played. They've been under 500 the last 10 games. So, right now the Flyers have been consistent. They're gaining ground. They're 6 points up on it, or 5 points up on the second wild card. So, I mean, right now, if you factor in a team that's 7 points out of a playoff spot probably isn't going to make it, you have to say that a team that's 5 points up in a playoff spot probably is going to make it, or the chances of them making it are pretty good.
Yeah, if I'm the Flyers, I think you're surprised where you are, and I think when those kinds of things happen, you're playing with house money now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're still in contention, you're feeling confident about where you are at the trade deadline, I don't think you sell. I think you stay the court, or maybe you make a smart deal that makes sense with an expiring player that you probably have
a lot
an
of
indication.
expiring players, Pete. They have to sell something.
Yeah, they have to sell, but maybe you also retain them by saying, hey, you guys got yourselves here. Go see what you can do and put a vote of confidence in. And that's taking measure of things like how are people feeling in the room, the culture of the organization. And we know the Flyers, and they're probably the most public team about what they do for legacy veterans of that organization. Actually, it's a model a lot more teams should look at.
Yeah,
the Flyers probably do it better than anyone else.
I always say Flyers, Bruins, Leafs, Rangers, and Canadians, they're the best ones for alumni association.
Yeah, and what they do, and there is a benefit to being a Philadelphia Flyer when it comes to where you end up in your career. And if you can show support to these kids, the ones who are there, and then to the veterans who are free agents, and say, hey, we want to see what you can do, and we're putting a faith in you, you're going to have an idea who you want to sell, retain right now, and you're going to have an idea of who's likely to retain. I'd say let them run. You may have to sell something, but don't sell the farm just to collapse.
They're not going to sell a ton, but they are going to sell the necessary ones, the ones that they know aren't in the future. And look, they have young players they can put in their place. It's like this. Even if the Flyers were going to be in the first place spot in the Metro, that'd probably be the worst spot for them. I mean, it probably would, based on who they'd have to play in the playoffs. But right now, if the playoffs started today, they would play Carolina.
Yeah.
They're beating Carolina in a 7-game series.
Yeah.
Carolina plays a very similar game, as a matter of fact. And I think after, a 7-game series, it would be a different story. So, and I think the team knows that. There's no reason that they have to say it, because right now they're doing well. So, but I mean, they know that they're not like the Avalanche. Hey, maybe they'll beat the Avalanche on Saturday, but they know they're not the Avalanche.
Right. Just on the waiver wire this afternoon, it was curious that Carolina, as you mentioned, Russ, with their goaltending issues, Kochetkov, I'm not sure if he's back from concussion protocol, but I know that they picked up Spencer Martin off of waivers from Columbus, and I knew Spencer Martin was going to get claimed by somebody because he's a capable number 3, a capable backup, and he's only making the biggest thing is he's making like $762,000. So I think he's even below veteran minimum because of the contract that was already existing. So, a team that is desperate for goaltending, brings a guy like that in who doesn't impact the cap that much.
What's he really going to bring to them in the end?
He's a body, Russ. I mean, remember their situation.
More than a body. Like if they're just replacing Kochetkov because they know he's out long term, okay. But you have Ronta too. Like, what are you doing? None of these guys are improving your overall chances to win the cup. Spencer Martin's not doing that either.
No, I agree with you. He's definitely not somebody who's going to lead them to the promised land. But right now, I think they're thinking Kochetkov is going to be out for at least a few weeks, and we need somebody to replace him. I know Peter's got to get on his plane pretty soon, so we'll bring this up. We know one team that's going to be a buyer is going to be the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah. It's just a question of what they're going to buy. We speculated. I know that I think Randy was speculating. Elias. Peter, you had an interesting name.
Well, it's popping up more and more, and it's Chychrun. And there's some interesting things about that I think make a lot of sense. But something's going to have to go out. And what's interesting is Chychrun's still got another year remaining. So it makes sense. It plays into a hockey deal, which I think the Jets would like in terms of that.
And so would Ottawa. Ottawa wants players.
And Ottawa wants players. So, but they've got 2 expiring contracts on defense in Dillon and DeMello. But I'm also curious. It seems that Nate Schmidt has been the odd guy out the times, and I'm wondering if Schmidt would go back, who has 2 years remaining at 5.9, because that's about $1 million cheaper than what Chychrun is. I don't know if that's.
I don't know why they would do that, though.
I don't know why they would do that, but I do think. I do think you could definitely see Logan Stanley being moved.
Sure.
But and then Chychrun gives you security for next year, and I think that's why it's an appealing deal, because if the Jets hold on and say they get into the playoffs, well, they're going to get into the playoffs, but say they get in, they don't quite go all the way. They don't want to completely go all in to have to refigure it out next year. There's something that's working there, so I think that's why Chychrun makes sense, because you're going to lose one of Dillon or DeMello regardless. So let's shore it up right now with Chychrun with another year next year, and then say, hey, we're going to take a run at this 2 years in a row.
Well, the other thing I could tell you, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, Schmidt, actually, he's got one more year just like Chychrun does. They're both – Schmidt's making 5.9, Chychrun's making 4.6. So it'd be a $1.3 million increase in terms of salary. So you definitely have to think that Winnipeg would have to throw in maybe a first-round pick or a big prospect.
It would be something like a first-round pick.
Right.
Here's my feel. But, again, that could be pick number 32.
Sure.
Pete would hope that anyhow. But the point I'm making here is I've got some secondhand info, and Chychrun really likes it there. And his dad likes watching him play there. And so I kind of wonder what the rush is to trade Jacob Chychrun, because he might want to stay there.
Exactly.
Well, I don't think there's a rush to trade him. I think they recognize the situation that occurred with DeBrincat, and they don't want to be stuck in a situation where if we can't get this guy signed, get a depreciate. We don't get what we paid to get him.
Oh no, I get it. But right now he's happy there and he's putting up good numbers. Like if I were them, I would really make sure that you can't sign him first.
Right, but that organization is going nowhere. That's
this year they're going nowhere.
Yeah, right. But I agree. But there's a lot of talent there. But the thing is that they're doing an internal audit essentially of what's going on in that organization, and something's not working when you have the talent that they have in Stutzla, in Tkachuk, in Batherson.
The goaltending evaluation. They haven't evaluated a goalie correctly in like 4 years now.
I mean, but believe me,
other goalies are doing well in other places that were in their employ before.
Believe me, there are teams inside their division, inside their province, that would kill to have 3 defensemen like Chychrun, Shabbat, and Sanderson. So, they have pieces there. And I don't think that their secondary pieces are all that bad. I think it's more than the goaltending. I think it's like a lot of individuals and not acting as a team, and maybe that'll come along in time.
Part of it, I do think they need like a veteran winner there for sure, but I also do think it's goaltending, and I think if I were them, I would be willing to trade multiple pieces, 2 or 3 pieces to get a Gibson. If you did that would move the needle because they need something like that. They need a veteran goalie who's got a good history in this league. Right. And that can lead a bunch of younger players. They have some players now that aren't too young, but that's what they need.
Well, that they're gonna. I mean, the thing is, the problem is that they signed Corpusalo for I think 4 years,
and that was the previous administration. They could just
but Russ, right? Well, at $5 million, that's the problem.
It happens.
You're gonna have to find.
Bob was a $10 million backup until he got his game back.
You're going to have to find somebody to take that contract off of your hands to be able to bring in a Markstrom or a Merzlikins.
They're not in cap trouble.
But with all these contracts that they will be. I mean, they're not.
I don't think they're in. I don't think they're in any kind of serious cap trouble coming up.
Well, I mean, I believe that they're not in as great a cap situation as you would think based on all the contracts that they've signed. I'm just looking right now at what they have. I know Peter's got to go in a second here, but like as of next year, they only have $12 million in cap space, and that's not signing. They have 2 restricted free agents, 3 restricted free agents. They're going to trade. They're going to trade Tarasenko. They're going to trade Kubalik. Maybe they. But if they want to bring players in like they say they do,
I don't know if they really. If they got a top-notch goalie. And if they happen to be paying $10 million for the goalie position, they probably could get Anaheim to eat some money too. I would look at it and say that's well spent money because I think their team would be much better. That's just me.
All right, Peter, we'll let you go.
Well, I got a couple minutes here, but I think with Ottawa, and someone's gonna load up on Tarasenko. I think someone's going to do it because they're going to say, what's the headache, particularly if Ottawa retains a little bit of money, right? They're going to try because you catch lightning in a bottle with them. Like, I think one of the really interesting things that we always have to remember about the postseason is it's the most variable opportunity, like the most variances compared to logic happen there. And things happen like St. Louis won a cup for no reason at all, other than Binnington just wouldn't let anything in. Right. Vegas in their inaugural season, Fleury caught lightning in a bottle. All you need is someone to get hot and do things that are a variance to the norm in a positive sense, and amazing things can happen. Because if you go back and look at who won the cup, where they finished, you want to be in the top 10, and you want to have an interesting path and someone get hot. You never know when it's going to happen. That's why GMs keep doing this. If it was a guaranteed thing, and if we really looked at it right, they wouldn't bet on this because most of the time the bets don't pay off. But when they do, it's a big win.
Now, apparently, and I haven't listened to it yet, but there were notes on X regarding what Elliot Friedman said on the recent 32 Thoughts podcast, and he was talking about the Leafs situation, and the Leafs broke their 4-game losing streak last night, beating Calgary 4-3. Austin Matthews with 4 points, a hat trick. So yeah, they need Austin Matthews to be Superman for them to win a game. But Friedman said, and I'll quote here, I think Toronto is thinking bigger picture.
Yeah.
I don't think this is about this year anymore. I think they're thinking about where they're going. I really wonder if deep down, that is, as an organization, they're saying we're not good enough to win this year. Hello, folks. I've been saying this all year. And the thing is, what I've been saying for a while now is this was a year of evaluation. This was, okay, let's see if Joseph Woll can be our number one goaltender. Let's see what Matthew Nyes is. Let's see what Timothy Liljegren can be as a defenseman. Let's check out some of the guys. Go ahead.
To that point, I just want to interrupt you. To that point, is it a year of evaluation at the expense of switching GMs? Because really, the Leafs should be looking to take another step. They got the first round monkey off their back. They need to build on that. And if you set back to evaluation, what do you mess up by not continuing momentum? And I think there's
certainly they didn't cop to this in October, Pete. They didn't start the year saying, this is a year where we may not be as good as we've been in the past. No, they waited until they failed.
Yeah.
And now they're saying it.
And I don't think that sends a good message to the team.
The New York Jets do that every couple of years.
But Russ,
do it the same way.
And this is the thing. And I said this in May.
I got to run, guys.
Okay,
take care, guys.
Thank you. Russ, I said this in May when I was at the media availability that Kyle Dubas, which turned out to be his last media availability, and he said, remember, he was like, we love the core four, we believe in them, blah 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 blah. It was boilerplate. Him and Shanahan, and they would come out and they'd defend him to the hilt. And after they lost to Florida, Dubas came out and said, basically. He didn't come out and give them the rubber stamp. He basically said, we're going to look at things. He didn't come out and say, we're keeping them all. Right. We're going back with the same band. And then he was gone a week later. And when Treliving comes in, it was basically, well, I've got to stick with these guys because I'm coming in and I can't have the first thing that I do is to trade Mitch Marner before July the 1st. Or trade William Nylander.
But I gotta say, do you think consumer confidence is high on Brad Treliving right now in Toronto?
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it doesn't matter in this instance what the fans think. He's a first-year GM. It's what the organization thinks.
But I'm just asking you, what do you think the fans think of all this?
I think the fans are fans. They want this team to win the Stanley Cup. They've wanted this team to win the Stanley Cup. But the problem is that you had an organization that stupidly over the last 5 years, when it was clear that this group could not win by themselves, because remember, it's the core four and Morgan Riley as the centerpiece of the organization, and all the pieces external of that have revolved. It's been Thornton and Foligno and O'Reilly and Shen and all these guys. It's been that core five group. And if you believe that core five group can't win because of, whatever, because they're spending too much, they're all good, but they're spending too much money on them, then you have to change that. And maybe Dubas realized that they had to change it. And, then he's gone, and now Treliving comes in and he goes boilerplate. He goes status quo. He says, okay, I'm going to re-sign Matthews. I'm going to re-sign Nylander. At the end of this year, then, okay, we're talking to Tavares. We're talking to Marner about extensions, and now the cap is going up. We'll have more money to spend. Yeah, you have more money to spend, but the more money that you spend on that core group, the less money you have to address the areas of need that have needed to be addressed for, going back even before Shanahan, going back to,
If I were Shanahan, I would really want to hear Treliving's off-season plan the day the season ends. What is your plan? Because I don't know if he has a good long-range plan yet. He might by that time, but I don't know if he does.
Well, the question is whether, I mean, I would be surprised if a GM that has been in the NHL this long doesn't already have his plan. He knows who are the free agents in this market on July 1st. Now the question is, that list will get shorter, could get shorter as we get closer to July 1st, because guys are going to sign. Will Chris Tanev, will Noah Hannafin, will Matt Dumba, will Brett Pesce, will all these guys hit the market on July 1st?
Right. Okay. So as an example,
Yep.
The reason I would ask him for his plans, because I think Shanahan needs to really look it over and say, okay, now I've seen your plan. What do you think the probability of it succeeding is? Because you just named 4 guys. 2 of them could be off the market even before all that starts, and then he's limited all of a sudden, right? That's what I mean.
Right. And then if you can't sign these guys, then you have to trade for somebody like them.
Yeah.
And then you're trade, and that's where, that's why what Friedman is saying is consistent with that, because they don't have a ton of assets. I mean, now I believed in what Kyle Dubas was doing and thought that it was logical. But the thing is that to make the Ryan O'Reilly deal more effective, you can give up a first round pick for Ryan O'Reilly, but you need to keep him around. You need to sign him.
So shouldn't True Living sell off some assets at the deadline?
And he might. And that's the thing. It's like, if if this is true and the organization says, okay, we're not going to win the Stanley Cup this year, then I'm going to Tyler Bertuzzi before March the 8th and said, okay, do you want to get traded to a contender? Because we'll make that happen for you. And they could shop him around and get, draft picks, get draft capital back.
I think they need to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, list here, Mike. I wanted to do it real quick.
Yep.
And we can end with this, but
yep.
This is a list from StatMuse of the top minutes defenders in this league. So it's not what they're averaging, it's the total.
Okay.
The number 1 guy in the league, and I knew he was playing a lot, but Mike Matheson is the number 1 guy in the league. So in other words, he's got 31 points, but he's also got the most ice time to get those 31 points. So buyer beware, I think, on that one, because, look, he's a talented offensive player, but he's playing a crap load.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Noah Dobson. I had no idea he was getting loaded with minutes to this degree. I don't know if you did either.
I knew he was playing a lot because, remember, they had injuries like Pellick and
number 2 in the league. Did you think that?
Number 2 in the league. If I would have guessed that it would have been like somebody like Morgan Riley, who's playing like 25 minutes a night or 24 minutes a night. But
yeah, and he's definitely in Norris consideration because he's got 43 points and he's a plus 16, and there's a lot of other good things in there. Devin Taves is 3. Cam Fowler's 4. Like, we kind of guessed Cam Fowler would be high because we saw that with all the changes they made in Drysdale out, he was playing a lot. Carlson is next. Rasmus Dahlin, Brock Faber, which is like 8th.
Yeah.
Roman Josi, Quinn Hughes, Travis Sanheim. So, I mean, and the list goes on, but it's interesting. So what I did find interesting is like not one New York Rangers on that list. And I think Fox may have been if he didn't miss some games. But while their defense, the Rangers, is faltering a bit, it's not because of minutes.
I'll just end with this because I think he means this as a joke. But Bertuzzi for Hall might not lose, it's lose. Second of all, Detroit doesn't want Bertuzzi back. They didn't want to sign him. Third, the Leafs don't want Justin Hall because they want defensemen who are actually good. So that's not happening. So let's just say this. I think that I don't think that Toronto is going to make any kind of major ads by the deadline. I know that they continue to talk. Oh, they're talking about defense. Yeah, they're talking about defense that they could, if they could trade for somebody who had term on his contract that they believed in long term, then that might make sense. But what are they going to get? That's why unrestricted free agency, even though it's more costly, that they're not going to trade their top prospects. They're not going to trade their 2024 first round pick. They don't have a 2025 first round pick. So they're not going to trade their 2024 pick They don't have a second round pick for this year, 2025, and 2026. So they don't have a lot of draft capital. So they can't go out. Like if you're talking about trading a 5th round pick for a defenseman who could help you at close to the deadline, okay, fine. But I don't think that's.
No, they need to get 5th round and 2nd round and other picks.
Right. And that's why, like,
acquire them.
If they're of the mind as Elliot is reporting, and I don't doubt it because Elliot's the best there is, and I'm sure his sources are impeccable, then what they're doing is, okay, we realize that this is the team that we have, and maybe even minus a piece or two is not going to win, and maybe we need to acquire some assets and just evaluate what, they make the playoffs. That's great. They're not like, going to tank and be in the Max Celebrini sweepstakes, but, they can't do that with the players that they have. But I don't think that they're going to go balls out.
But if they don't make the playoffs,
mm-hmm.
They could get in the top 6 or 7.
Yeah. And that would be beneficial. And this is a good draft, but
right.
So, I mean, if they miss the playoffs and even had a pick in the teens, it would be right. So, and it does look like that, even though I at that time was scratching my head because a lot of people were at the draft in Nashville of who Easton Cowan was. He made Team Canada at the World Juniors. He's got 50 points in 28 games with London. He looks like he's a pretty decent prospect. Now, whether he'll be a success in the NHL, who knows?
I mean, so far so good with Cowan, and Nyes isn't quite, I think, what you hoped he was going to be maybe in his first year, but he's doing okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, right now, he's a big, strong kid. He's playing on a second line. He's got some creativity. He's good defensively. He's pretty decent offensively. I think he's going to grow into – I think he's going to be a 20-25 goal scorer. I think he's going to next year end up being in the tops, still either on the top line or the second line. So, they're making progress, but, they're not a team that is a serious contender. In the East, it's Boston, it's Florida, it's the Rangers, maybe Carolina. There might be one other team, but Toronto is not a big-time contender for the Cup, and I don't think.
And look, the Avalanche, if they get Landeskog back, watch out, man, because he's skating.
And if they make a trade for a second-line center, because they're in the Lindholm sweepstakes or Monahan or any of these guys, so we'll be talking about that all the time.
And the Oilers, can't forget the Oilers.
Yes, I can. We'll be discussing that for the next few weeks leading up to the March 8th deadline. For the departed Pete Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.